All right, we are live with another episode, and I'm super excited to introduce y'all to today's guest. On today's episode, I interview a relationship and holistic wellness coach, an entrepreneur, co-founder of the same community, podcast host of Friend Advice My Friends Ignored, creator of the Chakra Healing Journal, and TikTok influencer. Welcome to the Winner Circle, Audrey Brothers.
Oh, what a warm welcome. Thank you so much. It's so interesting hearing you say all that. I'm like, wow, I've accomplished so much. I feel like it's something just a limiting belief of a lot of times I underestimate how much I've actually accomplished in the last several years. So thank you for that. And thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, you've accomplished so much already, and I can't wait to see what lies ahead of you in the future. I connected with you through the algorithms. The algorithms brought me to you at the perfect time. I was going through a really rough breakup, and that's kind of what you talk about. You ended a 7, 8 year relationship about 7 months ago, and you've been really vulnerable on social media and created a community to help others going through this similar situation. So I'm super excited to hear about your journey. The goal of these conversations is to really uplift, inspire, and empower listeners to move forward with greater faith and belief in themselves on their hero's journey ahead. And often when they hear like this list that I read off of yours, like they say, well, how am I going to get here? But when we dive into your hero's journey, we'll see you started somewhere too, and we could all accomplish these things. It just starts with the choice to step forward and say yes to our call. The first question I like to ask every guest really sets up the tone of this interview. It's a really positive question, and it's Audrey Brothers, what do you love about your world right now? Not about the external, everything on the outside, but what do you love about your personal world right now?
You mean just my internal world and where I'm at in that capacity?
Yeah, well, your internal world and just your world outside of like the news, the media, all that drama, you know?
Yeah. The first thing that came to mind, and I hope this kind of answers the question, is just deepening the relationship I have with myself. Like that's what I've loved about my world right now. It's kind of selfish in a sense, but I don't want to view it in a negative way. But I feel like right now I'm in this chapter of extreme self growth and self improvement, and it's just been a whirlwind of a journey, but also a blessing along the way to be able to go through this intense healing journey with myself, which of course creates changes in my external world. So despite everything going on in the external world, I just feel like everything I love currently in my life is happening within. There's just been a lot of changes, a lot of drastic changes that I've experienced over the last year to 3 years that have completely changed me as a person. And I've loved watching that develop over time. And that's just kind of where I'm at right now.
Thank you for sharing. Another question I like to ask every guest, like right off the get-go, pertains to your mission. And so that would be your mission in everything that you do, whether that be as a coach, co-founder of the same community, a podcast host, an author, an influencer, a friend, a daughter, and everywhere in between. What is your overarching mission that threads between all the different roles you play?
That's a good question. For me, I think my biggest mission at this point in time, and it's definitely developed over time, is to remind people, everyone in my life, all of my loved ones, including myself, that life is meant to be experienced. I think a lot of times we run away from experiences of life, or we cling to certain experiences of life, avoid certain experiences, but ultimately at the end of the day, we are meant to embrace every single experience. We're not meant to run from them. We're not meant to be scared of them. We're not meant to cling on or hold on to specific ones. We are here to fully welcome in every experience, including every thought, every emotion, every feeling, every sensation, with an open heart, an open mind, and open arms. And I feel like that's something that I've been embracing over the last several years. and encouraging others to do the same. And I just feel like that's a common theme that keeps coming up for me. And it just is something I feel like that is my mission, to remind people on this planet, is that life is this beautiful experience and we're meant to embrace every experience that it has to offer without any resistance. And we're meant to have fun with it along the way.
Hmm. And also embrace the process of that being, that doing. And to me, that's what being a winner is. This show is called Welcome to the Winner Circle. And for me, a winner is someone who steps into the arena. So often in society and culture, like a winner is the person that has that job or has that relationship or has that house. But I don't think that's what it is. I think it's in embracing the process to that destination. So process orientated rather than the destination, you know, embodying that person that you wish to become, because you already are that. What would that person do now? And then do a little thing, maybe, and it doesn't have to be drastic. It could just be like maybe you take a deeper breath, you breathe into your belly, breathe into the parasympathetic nervous system, or maybe you stand with a bit more upright, proud posture, or maybe you just let go of those thoughts, acknowledge what's coming up and allow it to go, or just being present. Those are all little steps that bring us to where we want to be, and where we want to be is already here. It is already now. So for me, that is a winner, someone that steps into the arena, that embraces the process. What does going for your win mean to you? And what does that look like for you in your life today?
Yeah, going for the win, or yeah, similar to what you said, it's about the journey to me. I think it's really easy to get lost into this cycle of thinking where it's always about the destination. It's like, oh, when I achieve this, then I'll be happy, or when I have the perfect body, then I'll be happy, and so on and so forth. But ultimately, the growth and the change that you want in life, including myself, this is something that I've experienced a lot and had to really come to terms with over the last several years, is that the growth and the change that you seek in life is happening during the journey. Every day you have the choice to ask yourself who you want to be, how do you want to feel, who do you want to step into. And it's in those moments where you're embracing change and you're embracing growth, and eventually you're going to get to where you want to be. But it's the journey that is the win, right? It's the process,
Mm-hmm.
all of it unfolding, where you are stepping into becoming a winner. And that to me is so much more profound and so much more meaningful than trying to just get to the outcome. Because if you can't appreciate the journey, you're not going to appreciate the end result when you get there, because it's the journey that is where the magic is, happening. And I forget what the second question was.
So yeah, what does your win look like for you today? Like what does your day to day look like, um, embracing the process?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in this will relate to my breakup, so similar as to kind of what you said and how the algorithm linked us up. I did just come out of a long-term relationship about 7 or so plus months ago, came out of an 8-year relationship, and it has been an emotionally turbulent journey where my whole life just felt like it shattered, and I had no idea how to pick up the pieces. And it was a really hard change to embrace because I didn't know where to start. And I had a lot of poor coping mechanisms at the beginning, from drinking and still smoking weed and doing things like that. But ultimately I hit a point where I had to make a change. And so I just really started focusing on myself. A lot of my mindset originally was focused on, I was focused on what went wrong. I was focused on all of the feelings of nostalgia and feelings of resentment and depression and grief. And I was really just losing myself in those thoughts, as well as thoughts about the future, focusing on what could have been from my relationship and comparing myself to everyone else in my life who's engaged, married, has kids, have houses, and all of these things. And I had to do a lot of inner work to get myself back into the present moment, to release myself from those mindsets. And ultimately for me, embracing the journey started with just taking it day by day, moment by moment. And so for me, that looked like creating a fulfilling daily routine for myself. I kind of, of course, when you come out of a long-term relationship or any relationship, you kind of lose your sense of routine. You might be in a whole new environment. You're not around the person you're used to, and you might be in a whole new location or whatever it may be. And that was the case for me. So I really had to get clear on what was going to help me feel like my best self. And I had to get clear on also what I wanted out of my vision of the future, because it was a blank slate, right? I had this opportunity to be like, all right, I can either view this as something that's a chapter of solitude and loneliness and grief, or I can view this as a chapter of solitude and freedom, where I have the freedom to choose what I want to do. And so from there, I just focused on really cultivating this fulfilling daily and weekly routine. I kind of just broke everything down day by day to make myself not busy where I'm distracting myself of what's going on internally, but busy in the sense of where I'm building a new life for myself from a place of love rather than a place of grief and depression and fear and anxiety. And I've been meditating a lot. I do a lot of EFT tapping. I've embraced a lot of yoga, got back into running, and just really focused on crafting things for my businesses and spending more time with the people who I already have relationships with, and just kind of taking everything and putting it into little baby steps and creating these aligned actions towards my vision of the future. And I mean, that's just kind of where I've been at in my journey of rediscovering myself and, embracing this entire journey for what it is.
Hmm. You mentioned your vision of the future. What is that?
That is still something that's in progress. I feel like I'm the type of person where it's always changing. But for right now, where I'm at is move out of my parents' house. I'm not trying to be here forever. So the end goal is to move to New York City, actually, which I'm hoping to do that come spring of next year if everything stays on course. On top of that, I'm really hoping on building more of the same community and branching that out with my business partner, Sarah. We have a lot of goals for same and what we'd like to see it become in the near future. So that's another big goal. On top of that, I'd like to continue growing my coaching business and my podcast and just continue putting myself out there and share my vulnerability with other people, because I think that is the best way to establish meaningful connection with other people and also just help people feel less alone, which I feel like that is something that I feel very passionately about. Another thing that I'm really also passionate about is travel. I'd love to embrace more of that in my vision of the future. I'm a Sagittarius rising, so it's just in my astrology chart, and it's just something I feel really called to do in this life.
Hmm. So what draws you to New York, and where else are you drawn to travel and explore?
Yeah, so I don't know if you've ever heard of astrocartography. It's a map of the world based off your natal birth chart. And you can look it
Okay.
up for free online. You just need to know your birth time, date, and location. And
Okay.
it will tell you basically where in the world you should travel, live, or where you're going to experience the most love, where you're going to experience a lot of success in your career, and or on the contrary, maybe you're going to experience a lot of challenges in some places. So it's a very extensive map of where you could travel to or where you could live based off your natal chart. And for me, um, where it says I should go is San Diego if I want to experience a lot of blessings in my career life, which I've never been to California, but that is somewhere I'd like to go. On top of that, London is somewhere where it also tells me where I should go and where I'm going to feel like my most authentic self, which is kind of why I chose to go there for my first solo trip back in May after the end
Hmm.
of my relationship. Where else? Hawaii, I'll have the most creativity and the best love life, which is interesting. So I'd like to experience some of those places just to see what the energy is like in those areas, because in London, I definitely felt a shift in energy in comparison to where I am now, which is Cape Cod, Massachusetts. But to answer your first question, the reason I am drawn to New York is simply because I feel like where I'm at my in my career and at this point in time, it would just be the best move for my career. And I have a lot of community there. And plus, I have always just felt drawn to it for some reason. I just feel like New York is just this magical city filled with opportunities, and there's always something going on. And I actually love that. And I love the energy of the city. It's always spoken to me. And I've actually wanted to move there for the last 8 years, but my relationship kind of prevented me from doing that, which is on me. But now I just kind of feel like it's something I have to do for myself. Scratch that itch.
Mhm. Yes, and you have the goal of spring of next year. That's kind of your timeline that works best for you.
Yeah, if I'm being transparent, I crunched some numbers last week and I was like, yeah, it's not going to happen anytime soon just because New York is a very expensive city.
Yeah. Hmm. All right, let's take a moment to celebrate some of your wins. Like, I know you're a very humble person. You come across as such on all your podcasts and in your writings, but let's take a little moment for you to shine. What are some of your biggest wins and accomplishments you are most proud of that you just like to celebrate
Oh,
right now?
yeah, I love that question. Um, this might sound strange, but one of the wins that I'm really proud of is leaving my relationship. I had that was about 7 months ago, but it took a lot of courage. I had to face a lot of fear. There's a lot of adversity to that decision and to go through that life change. And it's something I'm really proud of myself for not only having the courage to do, but also just the perseverance to keep moving forward and to not continue to dwell on the past, but rather just continue focusing on the present and my vision of the future. So that's one win that I am proud of. On
Hmm.
top of that, I'm proud of creating the same community with my business partner, Sarah. So, just for those who are listening and don't know what SAME is, when I left my relationship, I decided to share a lot of my experience of my breakup on social media because I felt this gut feeling that it was something I was meant to do. And eventually it connected me with people all over the world who were going through a similar experience. And at the same time, my business partner, Sarah, decided to be vulnerable and share her experience of anxiety and other mental health issues on her social media platforms. And she was connected with thousands of people all over the world going through a similar experience. And so, because we both were going through that and we're being bombarded with people who were like, same, we're going through the same thing. We're like, well, let's create a community where we can get people together to talk about these things, because ultimately so many people in my comment sections were saying they felt alone or that my content made them feel less alone. And ultimately, we created SAME as this community for a place to heal for those who feel the same. And it's been an ongoing journey, and we're constantly making changes to it. But that's another win that I'm definitely proud of.
Hmm. Hmm. And what's your vision? What's yours and Sarah's vision with Same? Where do you hope for it to evolve? You alluded that there's more vision there to expand.
Yeah, so we do have some developments in progress. Ultimately, one of the goals we'd like to do is to actually get therapists and mentors and other coaches to be a part of SAME and offer services through SAME, because I think, at least from my personal experience and Sarah's and a lot of other people we've spoken to, it's really challenging to find a therapist these days. I know I struggled with it for a very long time. And even the 2 times I've worked with therapists, they weren't good matches for me. And I just didn't want to go through the entire process of trying to find another one. On
Uh-huh.
top of that, it's just trying to find that right match with a coach or a mentor. So we wanted to, or we're in the process of adding that to the same resources so people can not only have access to therapists, but also have access to resources that therapists recommend, because a lot of SAME is focused on healing and mental health and things along that nature. On top of that, we just like to grow in terms of adding more meditations and tapping videos and affirmations. And one of the goals we have is to kind of develop it in a way where it's going to be like Netflix, but for your mental health. So depending on
Uh-huh.
what you're going through in your journey, there's going to be a whole section of resources for you to choose from, or a community for you to chat with. And we've got a ways to go, but we definitely have big plans for the future.
And I'm a part of that community, and I'm super excited just to see it continue to evolve and develop. It's been a great ally for me on my path so far.
Yeah, and I appreciate you being a part of SAM and connecting with you through it too, and hearing your own story. It speaks to me a lot, hearing everything you've endured and just everything that you're going through now to overcome your hardships and your pain of the past. It's admirable, and I appreciate you for being vulnerable and sharing your truth, but also just being a part of SAM and letting others hear your truth as well.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll maybe talk about that right now because I want to talk about your other win, and that's leaving your relationship. And so it's something that you've talked about on your podcast before, but I don't know if in this context. So like on your side, you made the choice to leave your relationship, whereas me and others in the same community, like we were not that one in that power position. um, what I've learned from that is one way to take that power back is to let that relationship go. That's one thing that I could do to take charge of my situation. I didn't choose the relationship to end, but I could choose to cut ties and let that go. And that's still a process, easier said than done. Um, but yeah, like let's talk about that decision to leave the relationship and maybe compare that to, I don't know, in the past that you've been left in a relationship, or maybe that's not been the case. Maybe you are always the one that leaves. But let's just talk about that different dynamic of you being the one who ended things versus that being thrust upon you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first thing that came to mind as you said that too brought me back to everything's an experience in life, right? That's meant to be embraced. So whether you have this gut feeling to leave a relationship because you just know in your heart and soul that you're meant for more, or maybe you've been stagnant for a while and you're meant to leave, or it's an experience where you're just meant to surrender to it. If you are the one that's broken up with, or you are the one that's left, they're both experiences that we have to accept. We have to embrace them. We can't control someone else, and we can't change how someone else behaves, but we can control how we respond to that. And similar to what you said, the way you control how you respond is by surrendering, by letting go. And of course that takes time, because when you're holding on to a relationship for so long, it takes time to let go of it as well. So it's an ongoing process. It's not linear by any means, but I think in either case, it's a struggle. I've had a lot of people, say that to me, like it's probably easier since you're the one that left. And maybe that's true, depending on how the relationship ended or whatever it may be, and the person's mindset about it. But for me, it was a really challenging time, and that's not to take away from the pain of others or the pain of my ex either for hurting him, but it was something that ate away at me, because I was walking away from a life that I'd spent 8 years building. And yeah, I could have stayed, but ultimately I just knew for me that it reached its expiration date, and it was something that I was truly meant to do. Didn't have a clue as to why at the time, but eventually it became more clear to me as time progressed.
Hmm. Let's talk about the grieving process. That's something I'm super curious to hear and learn from your experience in that so far. It's been 7 months. What has that grieving process looks like at the beginning, in the middle, and now?
Yeah, great question. So I briefly mentioned earlier how the beginning of the process was a mess. It was quite disastrous. I haven't shared this openly on social media or even on my podcast, I don't think, but I originally left my relationship back in October of last year because I had this overwhelming anxiety and this overwhelming gut feeling that just was incredibly loud, telling me I had to leave. And then every song, every sign, everything around me just was pointing to it's time to go. And it didn't make sense at the time, of course. But I ended up moving back into my parents' house from November and December. And then come January, I moved back to my apartment with my ex because I didn't want to give up. I wanted to see if we could make it work. And ultimately, from January until March of this year, it was just constant anxiety, like something was wrong. And again, I just had this gut feeling like I had to move on. And then March of this year, or end of February, is when I decided to fully leave. So it's been a little longer than 7 months in my mind mentally. I guess I've been checked out a little bit longer than 7 months. But at first, the grieving process was unbearable. It was unfathomable pain, right? Because you're grieving not only losing a partner, but you're grieving losing your best friend. You're grieving losing someone to lean on, and just every part of them that you've built a whole entire life with for so long. And so moving through that has been extremely challenging, especially in the first few months, because you're entirely on your own, right? Like there is no one. Of course, you have friends and families for support in that way, but it just feels incredibly lonely. And I did not handle that loneliness well at first by any means. I was using a lot of external sources of comfort, whether it's like the TV, food, alcohol, literally anything to kind of just distract myself. And at that point in time, I also knew better, but eventually I had this kind of awakening, maybe 3 or so months in, where I started to feel a shift. And I was like, all right, something's got to be different. We've got to take care of ourselves better. Let's, take more steps outside of our comfort zone because we're already outside of it, right? And that's one thing I kept reminding myself is, we're already in the unknown right now. Let's just continue taking those baby steps and keep moving into the unknown further and further. And so that's when I kind of booked my first solo trip and went to London and Edinburgh and Scotland to kind of just push myself. So the first 3 months was just a lot of tears. It was a lot of grief. It was a lot of mourning of what was or what could have been. And I was not present at all. And then I think around the 3-month, 4-month mark, I started to step into more presence and started to just really embrace the chapter that I was in. And then within the last few months, I've also realized that the grieving process is ongoing, of course, but I also had revelations throughout the journey that I wasn't just grieving my ex, but I was also grieving an old version of me too. The part of me that was in that relationship, the part of me that was in all of those memories and who went through all those experiences. That version of me doesn't exist. And that brought up a lot of new grief to move through because I wasn't just shedding a relationship with him, I was shedding a relationship with myself as well. And so there's just been a lot of new unfoldings with the grief that I've experienced, and it's just been ongoing. And there's still many bad days or bad moments that I have, but there's always going to be ebbs and flows. The journey's not linear, but it's in the ebbs and flows where you appreciate, the journey a little bit more, because I guess without the low moments, you can't appreciate the highs when you have them. And so that's kind of where I've been at in my journey, is just really trying to lean into the ebbs and flows of it all and embrace the ups and downs of this roller coaster, because as we talked about earlier, it's the journey that matters, not the destination. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. One thing that's alive for me and that's coming up for me in my process, and just hearing your response is like I'm trying to learn how to grieve. I feel like from my childhood and through my upbringing, so often things happen to me, and I just kind of like brush it off and not let it like hurt me, not let it affect me. And so it's like almost as if my grief, like my feeling switch has been like numbed. And so I'm trying to like learn how to grieve. Maybe you have some insight on that.
Yeah, so it's so it's interesting because I'm definitely a bit more emotional in just nature and in life in general. So I've always been pretty in tune with my emotions, I guess, and able to welcome them in. But similar to you, though, I have had resistance to feeling numerous things. Maybe not so much grief, but anxiety. I've experienced a lot of resistance to along just many chapters of my journey. I think the biggest thing when it comes to moving through tough sensations and tough emotions is to detach yourself from believing that it's a bad emotion. I think that's one of the biggest things that creates resistance in general is we have this belief that grief is bad, anxiety is bad, anger is bad, heartache is bad, and or whatever it may be, but ultimately it's just an experience of life. As I've talked about numerous times, it's just an experience we're meant to experience. And we're meant to experience grief, anger, anxiety, sadness, frustration, or whatever it may be, just as much as we're meant to experience joy and love and laughter and happiness and contentment and peace and all of these things. And so learning to detach yourself from believing succumbing to grief is, a bad thing, I think will help you surrender to it a little bit more and allow yourself to experience it even just a little bit more and open yourself up to experience the sensations of it. I think another thing too that I've personally found to be helpful is just tuning into the sensations of the emotion when it arises. A lot of times from personal experience, when a strong emotion arises within me, whether it's grief or anger or whatever it is, I tend to immediately start to analyze it. And I'm focusing, all right, this is anger, and I'm probably angry because of XYZ. And instead of, and in those moments when that happens, you detach from your body, you detach from the emotion itself because you're in your mind now and you're trying to analyze it, which therefore causes you to resist it because your mind doesn't want to deal with the emotion, of course. But if you can let go of analyzing the emotion and why you're experiencing it and just tap into your body, tap into the area within your body where you're feeling the sensations and just sit with it. It sounds so simple, but it takes practice and it takes work. But ultimately, if you can just sit with the sensations without trying to justify them, analyze them, or rationalize them, it's going to allow you to feel more deeply and allow yourself to move through that emotion, because we have to feel in order to heal. But a lot of times we end up resisting it because the mind just instantly gets involved and wants to protect us from feeling. But I'm a big advocate that we have to feel in order to heal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. Another thing that we were talking about before I hit record on this episode was your vulnerability, and it's something that I really admire about you greatly is you share yourself like an open book on your podcast and on others. Let's talk about your entry into that world. I doubt that that came easy.
Hell no. Absolutely not. There was a lot of resistance to that. Um, God, when I left my relationship, again, it was this gut feeling that, it didn't make sense at the time when I was leaving, but now it does. When I left my relationship, I also had this gut feeling that I was meant to share my journey on social media. That made no sense at all. And and in retrospect, like it just was mind blowing to me. But now it makes sense because it brought me to where I am now, and it's connected me with wonderful people like yourself who are going through similar experiences. But embracing my vulnerability was not an easy journey. It's terrifying because you're putting yourself out there in this entirely new way, and you have no idea how people are going to respond. You don't know if people are going to be receptive of it. Um, you know, I never ever thought I'd be someone on social media. It's never been a goal for me in life to like be an influencer or content creator ever. let alone to be a content creator who is crying in her videos, which are all like very genuine tears too. But I think that brought up a lot of fear because, one, of course, there's people out there who think my tears are fake or think that I'm just crying for likes and views. That's not the reality of it at all. My response to people who have resistance or an issue with people being vulnerable on social media is, I don't know what the difference is between me recording myself experiencing an emotion versus you recording yourself, playing basketball or surfing or making coffee or driving or whatever it may be. There's so many people out there that record so many parts of their lives to share with the world. And for me, the way I view it is there's no difference. They're all human experiences, and we're just sharing different human experiences. And that's kind of the mindset that I fostered in order to help me embrace my vulnerability journey on social media. But it's definitely been scary because it's a huge step outside my comfort zone. So
Mm-hmm. So how did you overcome that fear?
Honestly, by doing it. I think in order to overcome fears, we have to face them. And I knew in my heart and soul and in my gut that I was meant to speak upon my breakup in some capacity. And I remember recording some of the videos of some of my TikToks and recording some of the tears. And I was like, do I want to post this? And of course, my ego was like, no, you definitely don't want to do that. People are going to judge you. People are going to make fun of you. People are going to think this is weird or whatever it may be. There was so much resistance to it. But ultimately, I've been in this chapter of consistently trying to face a lot of my fears because I'm in this entire chapter of growth right now. And I just want to keep stepping outside into the unknown, because that's where we push our limits. And so I was like, you know what? I don't really care at this point. I had this strong inclination that it was what I was meant to do. And I stopped making excuses as to why not to do it, and instead just pushed myself to do it. And so I did. I shared videos of my genuine tears on social media and just my genuine thoughts and feelings about my breakup on social media. And to my surprise, those videos blew up. I had no idea that they would, didn't think that they would. And ultimately, the way I view it is it's because I embraced my vulnerability. I was expressing my truth with the world, and people can relate to that, right? Like, I think when you step into your authenticity and your vulnerability and who you truly are and who you're like, what you're truly feeling, people feel that energy and people can just feed off of it. And I think that's, in my opinion, why those videos performed well, because it was just my truth. And I wasn't scared of being seen. I wasn't scared of being judged. I was like, you know what, screw it. This is what I'm going through. I'm going to share it with the world. If they like it, they like it. If they don't, the world will keep moving on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm curious to ask you about kind of something that you bring up in one of your first podcasts, I think, is how in the early days you used to re-record your episode. Like you recorded the episode and then you're like, oh no, I need to do that again. And I'm sure that probably has come up with your social media posts too, where you recorded something and oh, I need to do it again, or maybe you shared something and then a bit later you deleted that. No, like, so let's talk about how that process has evolved.
Yeah. You have a good memory. That's hilarious. Yeah, at first when I started my podcast, I was ridiculously hard on myself and I struggled with a lot of perfection, like a, perfectionist mindset. And I definitely experienced a lot of that when I first started posting on TikTok and Instagram. So my content has quite evolved throughout the journey. I've been posting maybe for like 3 years now, and what I was posting originally on TikTok is much different than now, and same with Instagram. And I have just been so meticulous with so many things that it wasted so much time. I was so focused on trying to make it look perfect, trying to, not, slur my words or whatever it may be. But ultimately I realized I'm human. I'm going to make mistakes. I've like stuttered numerous times in this episode itself. And I'm just like, whatever. I'm not going to show up perfect all the time. And I don't need my content to reflect that. Or I want my content to reflect that rather, because I think it's helpful to other people to, remember that we're all human. We all make mistakes. No one's perfect at the end of the day. All we can do is keep trying to be the best version of ourselves. And ultimately, that's something I had to really undo and unravel throughout my journey, because I did start with such a perfectionist mindset. I re-recorded so many episodes of my podcast, and again, wasted so much time, and like, who cares? Like, I didn't even have an audience at that point. So it was ridiculous to me that I would even do that to myself. But now I'm just at this point where I'm like, if it feels good to me, it's good enough. There's no right or wrong. There's no perfect. At least I'm trying. And I think that's the difference that in mindset that I have now. Like, before, I was trying to be perfect. Now I'm just trying. So
Our biggest enemy is ourselves.
always, always, we're our own worst critic at the end of the day.
Mhm. So I like we've talked a lot about your relationship in this episode, and that's what your podcast is generally about. But you are so beyond someone that has ended a relationship or working through that process. You're a coach, you're a leader, you're an entrepreneur, you're an author, and I'd love to explore the origins to that beautiful story. Um, because that didn't always come along that way. Like, you were working various jobs. I think you were like a receptionist, and just from job to job to job, not at all your calling. And then you made that decision one day to go all in. And I think that all in was as a Reiki maybe was the first, and then that evolved into a wellness, holistic and wellness coaching, that evolved into your podcast, that has evolved into your same community. But let's talk about those early days, that origin story of your step into your must. You were on that, living that path of the shoulds of society, culture. Like, you should get the secure job, you should get this relationship, you should get this stability. But there's a deep calling within your being, your heart, that was pulling you towards your must, and that must is what you are embodying now. That leader, that coach, that entrepreneur, that author. How did you make that transition?
Yeah, great question. So when I reflect back on even just the last 10 years of my life, and I won't give the whole lengthy story, but I'll, give tidbits of it. I'm a vastly different person. I was completely asleep, or, not woke or unconscious, if you will, like several years ago. I was working from job to job. Like you said, I was working as a server. Then I was a receptionist at an animal hospital. And then I was an office administrator at an investment management firm up until COVID. And then when COVID happened, I had a lot of time for self-reflection, because I was working from home for like a year and a half, and I was just left alone with my thoughts. And I ultimately realized I was just completely off track with my life. And I knew this deep down. I think I just suppressed it and ignored it for the longest time, because it was terrifying to think of stepping into who I am today, because it just seems so drastic and so out there. So I avoided it like the plague. And then when, COVID happened, I ultimately was like, you know what? This is just not it for me. I hated what I did. And I ended up quitting my corporate job and pursuing becoming a Reiki master, which I just like found somehow through social media, I think, because I always knew I was meant to help heal others in some capacity. I did go to college to be to get a degree in psychology, and I always knew I was meant to do something in relation to mindset and healing and just overall wellness, but I had no idea what to do. I don't think many people know at the age of 18. So between age 18 and, I don't know, 27, I just was kind of going through the motions, just moving through life on autopilot, not staying true to me, but just staying true to society and kind of following into a path that wasn't in alignment with who I was at the end of the day. And so, anyways, I quit my corporate job and ended up getting a bunch of side jobs to help pay the bills in the meantime while I pursued other things. And I started just kind of posting on TikTok for fun as I was Reiki certified. I started sharing what I was learning from being Reiki certified, which is energy healing, and it's all about the chakra system. But I started sharing a lot of that on TikTok, and that kind of just blew up. I was just doing it for fun, and that kind of unfolded in that way. And then ultimately I was like, you know what, I really like learning and sharing all of this knowledge with other people. Maybe I'd like to make this my career and like become a coach. So then from there I looked into holistic wellness coaching and then got certified in that, and then eventually started a podcast and continued sharing more of my journey on social media, and then kind of went through my breakup and realized I had a lot to share about relationships just from what I've experienced in my own journey. And so I've kind of evolved from a receptionist to an office administrator to a Reiki master to now a relationship and holistic wellness coach, and it's just been a whirlwind of a journey.
So I want you to just picture someone listening here, and they're at that crossroads. They're at that crossroads of the shoulds of society, their parents' culture, etc., etc. And the calling deep in their heart, that calling to go to yoga training or to end their relationship or to move to this part of the country or to go on that solo trip or to whatever that calling may be, that knowing that's deep in their heart, and they're stuck in the mud. What would you advise that person?
I guess the first thing I would advise them to do is to really reflect on the beliefs that you're fostering right now at this point in time. I think a lot of times when we are contemplating stepping off the beaten path, or the take the road less wow, to take the road less traveled, it's terrifying, and we come up with all of these reasons as to why not to. And if you really rip that apart and rip apart the reasons as to why not to, they're typically not about us. They're not about, who we are. It's about what society thinks. It's about what our parents think, what our friends might think, what everyone else in society is doing, what society says is normal. And none of that has anything to do with us. And so I think that's the first place to start, is undoing a lot of those limiting beliefs, because until you can actually acknowledge that you have those beliefs, you can't overcome them, right? You've got to first acknowledge them and cultivate awareness that you have them in order to let go of them, transcend them, and then rewrite them to actually serve you. And just speaking from personal experience, that's what I had to do in terms of leaving my relationship. I had numerous reasons as to why to stay in my relationship. Like, you're going to get married this year. Everyone else around you is married or engaged and has kids. Like, that's what you're meant to do too. Oh, you're going to have to start over after an 8-year relationship. No, you should just stay because you've invested so much time. Or, he's going to propose to you later this year. You should stay. You're going to lose connection with his family, or society's going to judge you. Like, what are all your friends and family going to think? And just, all of these thoughts came up, and ultimately none of them had anything to do with me. They had everything to do with everyone else around me. And so ultimately I think the best way to really let go of all the shoulds is to focus more on, what do you want? Let go of the shoulds. There's no right or wrong, and that's something that I've learned. There's only what's right to you. The right and wrongs often just stem from society. So it's learning to let go of that kind of thinking and just turn inwards, focus on what you want, because the more that you can stay true to you and what you want is when you're going to live more in alignment with your truth and just feel a lot more at peace within yourself and within your reality.
That's some great advice. Another thing that I want to talk to about is I think something I feel like you should be super proud of.
Yes, I'm proud of the journal. Yes.
And it's this chakra healing journal. Like you're a published author, and I've not heard you talk about this on anything, but I'm gonna put this out there. Maybe it's already brewing in your mind, but I can't see you not writing a book um, about all that you've learned on this path of ending this relationship, healing yourself, the grieving. Your podcast alone has all the material you need to for so many chapters. So I don't know. Have you thought about taking your authorship beyond just this journal? And again, maybe let's just start with the journal. How did this come about? The process of getting this published, and then yeah, what are your visions for future writings and sharing? Because you're a beautiful writer. You write all the time in the same community, long posts, and also just on the social media. It's just like really well written, and I just see a book in your future.
I really appreciate you. Thank you for all of that. And yeah, so I am very proud of the chakra healing journal as well. I sometimes get flustered and forget a lot of the things that I am proud of or what I still want to accomplish because there's a lot. But the chakra healing journal kind of just evolved when I was Reiki certified and I was doing energy healing for a short period of time and was learning all about the chakras. And it just really resonated with me because I recognized how many blockages I had in my own energy centers. And as I was going through that kind of healing journey in terms of my chakras, I was like, a lot of other people are probably experiencing similar things. So let's make a journal about it. Like it's a self-explanatory journal. It's easy to do. It's, journal prompts and activities to do each day and week for each chakra. And, at that point in time, I was really into journaling, still am, because it's great for mental, spiritual, and just all your holistic well-being. But I just felt called to create something. And so I spent a lot of time creating that and crafting that. But furthermore, yes, I would love to write a book. It's something also that is a vision, a part of my vision of the future as well. And I've actually been thinking about that a lot lately. I think it's a theme that keeps coming up for me. And it's something I've thought about doing for several years, actually. I just didn't know what to write about at the time. But again, as I've said before, I didn't know why to leave my relationship in the past, like, this past year, but I had this gut feeling that I was what I was meant to do. And I think it's all unfolded exactly as it needs to help me step into who I'm meant to be, to help me continue evolving in this journey of life and to continue sharing the things that I learned from these experiences. And so a book is definitely in the future. And I was actually reflecting on a title this past week. So it's so funny that you brought that up.
Yeah, and I feel there's no barriers either because you know what it takes to self-publish. You know how easy, like easy-ish that is. Like you've done it already. And this is available. The Chakra Healing Journal is available on Amazon. So go check it out is what I recommend to the authors. And I look forward to future news on your book. And I look forward to that manifesting. Like
Thank you.
I can't see it not. Um, let's take a moment now to acknowledge some of the mentors and helpers that have helped you on your path that got you to where you are. Of course, you have many, so we don't need to name a huge list, but who are some of the pivotal ones? Who were they? And what were the key takeaways that you learned from them that you've incorporated into your being?
Yeah. First, right off the bat, Eckhart Tolle. I don't know if you've ever read The Power of Now
Yeah.
or New Earth. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle was the catalyst for my entire healing journey and spiritual awakening that I had about 3.5 or 4 years ago. I read that book and it just completely changed my life. So that in of itself just really taught me about what the present moment truly is and how to live more presently in that, and also taught me really more about the ego. And it just transformed me as a human. And of course, it took me a long time to actually apply a lot of those things that I learned because it's a journey, of course, undoing everything that you've learned throughout 27 years of life. So it takes time to undo those things and then rebuild them in a way that serves you and really be more present. So The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle was a big thing for me, but also Michael Singer, the author of The Untethered Soul. He changed my life. Like those two people, and also Abraham Hicks, if you ever listened to, them.
All of them, those are
Yeah.
all some of my favorites. I have their books. I have
Yep.
Untethered Soul,
There you
Cards
go.
Review. I'm gonna
Yeah.
pick one and let's share at the end.
Yeah. No, truly, all of those just completely shook me to my core and taught me so many life lessons. Like, especially Michael Singer, he talks a lot about how the meaning of life is to experience life. And I learned a lot from Michael Singer all of 2022. And I actually was reflecting on this recently, how all of 2022 on my social medias, I was like preaching all of this stuff about how everything in life is an experience. We're meant to embrace every experience. And I did believe it at the time full heartedly, and I understood it. But it wasn't until my breakup that I truly grasped everything that I had learned up until that point, because it allowed me to actually apply it. And that's, I think, something I'd really talk about in a book that I write, is like how to surrender, how to let go, and how to just lean into these experiences of life to really welcome them in and step into who we're actually meant to be and live in a place of more alignment and peace and fulfillment, rather than kind of focusing on how we think life should be.
And it's very interesting. The card that I pulled from the Untethered Soul deck here, it's about the Tao. And it talks about the Tao is in the middle. It's the place where there's no energy pushing in either direction. I feel like that's exactly what you spoke of. And to me, that's at the bottom of the exhale, the surrendering in that stillness, the bottom of her breath.
Yeah. You're not pushing in either direction. You're just surrendering to what is. You're not clinging to anything. You're not resisting anything. You're just surrendering to what is and allowing it to unfold in any direction.
And that was like the big message from, and I was talking to you about this in the same community from my like ayahuasca journey recently. It was just like the profound um stillness, serenity, peace in that surrender, and just a real embodiment of what that was. So that was really great for me. Um, this
I'd
next,
go ahead.
if you'd like to hear more about that, maybe we chat about that on your podcast, because
Yeah, right.
we don't have time to get into
Yeah,
that here.
I do want to hear more about your ayahuasca journey, but the fair, we'll deal. We'll talk about it on mine.
Yeah, because there's been many. I think I've sat like 10 times with that medicine, in addition to many other therapies, and some that I know that have been profound for you. Psilocybin, microdosing, that has been a profound healing tool for you, and um, some other things that we have in common: yoga, breath,
Yeah,
meditation, and those are all things we could talk about on an episode of your podcast,
for
Advice My
sure.
Friends Ignored.
For
Um,
sure.
to close every episode, I have a few last questions for every guest, and we got to that point, and um, the first one, you've learned so much about love on your journey, from your past relationship, the relationships before, and most importantly, the love for the self. That's where it begins. That's where it all originates and flourishes from. What have you learned about love? What does love mean to you, Audrey?
Well, it's a deep question. Love to me right now just means pure acceptance, pure forgiveness, and pure gratitude for what is. I spent a lot of time hating myself throughout my life, and all that did was project itself out onto everything that I did, especially my relationships. And within the last few years, especially this past year, I've learned a lot about what it actually means to live from a place of love. And it's been a journey, to say the least. But for me right now, love does mean just surrendering to all the fear and letting go of it so you can step into a place of acceptance towards yourself and forgiveness towards yourself and gratitude for all that you are, and recognizing that you are enough. You don't need a relationship, you don't need that job, you don't need anything outside of yourself in order to love yourself. And I think for a really long time I did think that. I thought that love existed outside of myself and I needed to go find it. But it turns out it was within me the entire time and I just needed to reconnect with it.
Beautiful. Well said. You said that was a deep question. I feel they're only getting deeper as we wrap this
I
along.
love it.
So the next question here is, through it all, through all the highs and lows of this journey, of this huge journey that you've been on, what has been the greatest life lesson that you've learned on your path that you feel called in this moment to share with us now?
Wow. I sometimes do terrible on the spot, but let's see what I can conjure up here. I guess similar to what I touched upon before is just really leaning into these experiences of life. Like that truly is something that I feel very passionate about, that I want people to really sit with a little bit longer. Is, you know, a lot of times we go throughout life and something unfolds and we wish it would had unfolded differently, or we want it to unfold differently. And then this creates a lot of resistance to what is, and this creates resistance to the present moment. But if we can just learn to let go of this mindset and this concept of thinking where things should have unfolded in a specific way, or, or if we can resist and let go of holding on to experiences, right? Whether it's a relationship, a feeling, a thought, or whatever it may be, we spend a lot of time and throughout life holding on to things, latching onto them, or resisting them. And this just prevents us from actually experiencing the fullness of life because we're trying to manipulate how life unfolds. And so I think that's something that I'd like people to really sit with more and learn about, because you can't experience the fullness of life if you're constantly trying to control how life unfolds. You've got to allow it to just do its thing and lean into the experiences that come with it, because that's what life is about. It's about the
Oh yeah,
journey.
absolutely. Lean on in, lean on in.
Yeah.
In 3 words, how would you describe the experience you were having on this earth? And it doesn't have to be a phrase, just 3 separate words, and you can elaborate on these words if you wish. But in 3 words, how would you describe the experience you were having on this earth?
Mm. At this point in time, I would say fun, uncertain, and mm, what's another word? Wow. I don't know. Invigorating. Is that a good word?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's unpack the word uncertain.
Mm. Yeah, that's good. I was hoping you'd ask. So I just nothing in life is certain, right? Like everything everything's always a question mark. We can never fully predict how something's going to unfold. And I feel like that's something I've been learning to accept and lean into more and more, is that life is uncertain. And I think the more that you can accept that as reality, the easier and the more fun life gets, because again, you're not trying to control how it unfolds. You're not trying to manipulate what happens. You just understand that it's uncertain. It's a gamble. It's going to unfold how it needs to. And it's going to always unfold in the way that it needs to, in your highest good. And it's going to work out.
It's all happening for us. That's what I believe. And that's a mindset, right? It's like, it's either it's happening to me or it's happening for me. Which path would you like to choose? The path I wish to choose is clear, and it's all happening for me.
Absolutely. And that's an empowering mindset to foster 100%.
And it's really that easy, and just putting in those reps, and it's catching yourself when you're, oh, it's happening to me. Is it happening to me, or is it happening to for me? And then we just reshift. We just reshift, and with all those little reshifts, it becomes our default.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it can definitely be hard in the moment to believe certain things are happening for us, especially when we're in the thick of it. Like, if we lose a job, we lose a relationship, we lose a loved one, or, whatever it may be, it can always seem very confusing and uncertain at the time
Uh,
when it unfolds. But ultimately, if you can just continue trying to believe and trusting that it is unfolding for you, not just happening to you, and that you're not a victim, but rather you're a victor, it all makes sense eventually. You just have to be
mhm.
patient and trust the process.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Lean on in.
Hmm.
The final question. We've played around with time. We've examined your past. We've examined the present, and we're going to venture off into the future, and we're going to step into a timeline a bit further away from now, and that is alongside an 85-year-old Audrey brothers. Who is that woman? Where are you? Who you surrounded by? What is the legacy that you've left in your 85 years here on this earth? And what is the predominant feeling in your body?
Wow. These were deep questions. They only got deeper. I do love it though. Um, wow. I honestly don't think I've ever thought that far into the future. So this is going to be fun
Hmm.
moment. The predominant feeling I'd like to feel is hands down peace and contentment. I'd like to step into that feeling, and I have more and more, but I don't want to continue moving on in this life living in a place that's not peaceful. So I'd love to be able to live at that point in time just completely content with how my life had unfolded, and also be content with how it is unfolding, and that feeling's peace, right, and acceptance. um as an 85-year-old woman, I'd love to look back at my life and know that I made an impact in a way that helped people evolve in this journey of life, in, I guess, the capacity with what I'm doing now, trying to be a leader and step into that role, and, coach people with their mindsets, with their relationships, with their just holistic wellness. I love talking about all of these things, and I've learned a lot in my own journey. So I'd love to continue on in that path. And I'm sure it will evolve over time, like we talked about. I could do that through a book, and can do it through my podcast. I have always thought about being a public speaker in some capacity, like giving lectures. Like I've always dreamt about giving a TED talk, which actually terrifies me at the end of the day. But I think as an 85-year-old woman, I'd love to look back at my life and say that I did that. Um, and I'd love to look back at my life and say that I've traveled to all 7 continents and seen lots of parts of the world, and embraced different cultures and different mindsets, different perspectives, because I think, when you can step outside of what you know and around the community that and put yourself in new communities and new cultures and new perspectives, like that teaches you so much. It just teaches you a lot about how other people live and how other people think. And I think that's just a powerful way to continue pushing yourself and to grow. Uh,
Hmm.
in terms of where I'd like to be, though, big question mark. Really no idea. But right off the bat, I love London. I wouldn't mind living there
Hmm.
at some point in time, maybe when I'm 85.
Beautiful. I would like you just to stay with this 85-year-old one moment longer. I want
Yeah.
you to maybe close your eyes and breathe with her. I want you to tap into her place of peace, her deep contentment. The sounds of London are in the background. The legacy that you've left has been vast and expansive. And I'm going to bring us back. I'm going to bring us back to the present day. And that 85-year-old woman, she whispers a message into your ear, Audrey. What does she say to you?
Mm. Keep persevering. Don't don't give up.
Mhm. You're doing it. You're being it. This.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Audrey. It's been like a real pleasure to connect with you in this conversation, and no doubt this has inspired, empowered the listeners, and myself, and hopefully you're leaving with some of those feelings yourself. For people wanting to connect with you, they can find you on your website, audreybrothers.com. On Instagram, you're at Audrey A Brothers, and on TikTok, Audrey Anna B.
Yes.
Anywhere else, or any last closing words from you?
Yeah, and you can find my podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts at Advice My Friends Ignored, which Derek talked about earlier. But no, I'm so grateful for this opportunity, and I love going on other people's podcasts and just connecting with other people like yourself. You did a wonderful job hosting this. You had asked such introspective questions, and you're very easy to talk to, and I appreciate that. I feel like we could just hang out and have such deep, meaningful conversations, and that's honestly what I live for. I hate small talk. I just always want to get to the nitty-gritty of things. But I'm grateful for this experience and everything that I've gone through up and till this point in time, and grateful for this experience of life. Although it has been uncertain, it's also been fun and invigorating in a way, because it's always changing. And I think one thing we all need to lean into a little more is just embracing change in life. It truly is just the most consistent thing that is on this planet. Life is always changing, so the more that we can lean into it, I think the less resistance we'll have to what is, and we can really just lean into life a little bit more.
And to close every episode, we bring our fist in, a digital fist bump, a choice to step into the winner's circle. Boom.
Nice.
That step into the arena. Thank you so much. And yeah, to more communications and conversations like these, and hopefully we have one on advice my friends ignored, and not too far from now. Thanks so much,
Absolutely.
Audrey.
Thank you.